June 4, 1942. Just before dawn, 200 miles northwest of Midway Atoll. The sea is a flat, cold black. The air tastes of oil and salt and a thin, metallic fear. On the flight deck of USS Enterprise CV-6, men move like shadows with names. Petty Officer First Class James Jimmy Wallace hauling a flight cable. Aviation machinist's mate Frank Ortega checking magneto timing on an SBD Dauntless. Lieutenant Commander Clarence W. Wade McCluskey standing over a sextant and a torn chart, his jaw set like a hinge. Above them, the first pale light of June pries at the horizon, while the carrier's boilers sigh and the big island of steel underfoot hums. Hundreds of tons of machinery and men brought to life for one purpose, to throw aircraft into the sky and keep them coming back. On the quarterdeck, the carrier's senior officers watch the horizon through glass fogged by breath. Rear Admiral Raymond A. Spruance, aboard as tactical commander of Task Force 16, leans on the bridge rail wrapped in a greatcoat, his face drawn into the map of the ocean ahead. Captain George D. Murray, the Enterprise commanding officer, paces and shouts clipped orders into a world of intercom chatter and running feet. Below decks, in the cramped berthings, the cooks are already at work. Coffee is thick, bitter, and handed out in tin cups that steam in the cool air. Somewhere forward, the engine rooms pulse like a beast beneath a blanket. The carrier smells of hot brass, gun oil, and seaweed, and of aviation gasoline, that sweet, flammable perfume that means both flight and the possibility of fire. Men who have been at sea for weeks rub their tired eyes and strap on leather flight jackets. Pilots check goggles and parachutes with hands that tremble if they'll admit it. And deck crews affix chocks and guide the planes into position with hand signals that look almost ritualistic in the half-light. At 0530, the first scout plane cracks the silence. An OS-2U Kingfisher wobbles back aboard with a report that strips the thin comfort from the morning. Contact unidentified aircraft heading toward Midway. Radios in the Combat Information Center spit and hiss. Operators translate static into coordinates. The carrier's radar, one of the early CXM sets, coughs up blips in the early dawn, ghostly echoes on a cathode screen. McCluskey listens, calculating fuel endurance, bomb loads, the time it will take to find and strike the enemy. The air group waits, engines idling like nervous predators. The first launches are chaotic in their precision. SBD Dauntless dive bombers roll forward, their wings clinking against the steel teeth of the catapult. The torpedo planes, slow, vulnerable TBD devastators, lumber into the sky, their pilots clasping the controls like lifelines. The decks become a choreography of ropes, flares, and shouted cadence as ordnance crews heave 500 and 1,000-pound bombs into the bellies of planes still warm from the hangar deck. When the Wildcats roar, their F4F engines a grinding, urgent sound. The carrier seems to exhale. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. They find the Japanese carriers, a moment described later in brief, cold reports. But here it is, immediate and sensory. The sun catching on black paint and rising smoke, the stagger of silhouettes that spell danger. From the bridge, the Enterprise's lookouts make out what the scouts have verified. Enemy carriers, their decks bristling with aircraft, steaming like dark, coiled sails. In the radio room, the messages go out in clipped Navy code. Crews strap into cockpits, fingers cold on triggers. Below decks, stokers shovel more coal into the boilers, metaphorically if not literally, to give steam to the ship's engines for the maneuvers Spruance will call over the next hours. The first attacks begin in a howl of pistons and metal. Dauntlesses streak like falling hawks, pulling into dive after dive, their wings whining as they turn on targets with machine guns and bombs. The torpedo squadrons, young men in fragile planes, descend in straight, unstoppable runs, engines screaming, hoping to make the Japanese fleet pay with their iron and guts. Over the carrier, anti-aircraft batteries open in the mechanical staccato of 5-inch guns and 20mm Oerlikons. Tracers stitch the sky like angry stitches. The Enterprise shudders as nearby explosions rock her hull. spray and smoke wash over the flight deck. Inside the ready room, Lieutenant Commander McCluskey hears reports bleed down to him. Radio traffic, burned voices, the quick cadence of damage control reports. Men shout the statuses of returning aircraft. Some come back with curtains of black smoke, others do not return at all. McCluskey thinks of fuel gauges, of the number of bullets in every plane, of the way the SBDs can take a beating and still pull out of a dive. He thinks of the men, pilots with names and faces, catapult crews who have already launched a dozen sorties and will push for another. By mid-morning, the air is full of wreckage. A dead wildcat spiraling, a burning float plane slumping into the sea, and far off the grotesque bloom of a carrier aflame. On the bridge, the Enterprise's officers watch Japanese carriers take punishment from dive bombers, and Tiger-style hits begin to smoke and burn. You can see the spume of near misses and the black tongues of burning oil. The carrier's crew keeps moving. Fire hoses hiss, medics sprint with stretchers, torpedoes are readied for possible counterattacks. The Enterprise catapult crews keep feeding planes into the sky, each launch a gamble that the birds will return. And yet, amid the chaos, the ship remains whole. She answers each crisis with steel and salt and the practiced efficiency of a crew that knows how to bleed and keep fighting. When word later reaches Japanese headquarters, twisted by confusion and wishful thinking, a rumor, a dispatch, an overreaching report that says the Enterprise has gone down. That report will be printed, carried, and believed in the enemy's press rooms. But on this morning, on this hard-working deck, the Enterprise is alive. Her men smell smoke and salt and hold to a single unspoken truth. Survival, for now, is a decision made in bolts and rope and the steady hands of those who man the ship. August 24th, 1942. The Coral Sea lies behind them, and the Solomons sprawl ahead like a green chain of teeth. The USS Enterprise plows through the Pacific swells under a low ceiling of clouds, scarred, scraped, and patched from Midway, yet unmistakably alive. Her hull still carries scorch marks from bomb near misses, and the scent of burned paint clings stubbornly to her decks. Sailors move past them like ghosts themselves, men who have seen too much sky on fire and too many friends' names vanish from the roster. In the Combat Information Center, the air is thick with heat and tension. Radar operators trace blips moving south. Japanese aircraft, fast and numerous, likely bound for the Enterprise and her escort carriers. The Battle of the Eastern Solomons is about to begin. Enemy bearing 085, distance 70 miles, comes the report. Captain George D. Murray doesn't look up from his map. Launch the ready group, he says quietly. His voice carries calm authority, a tone the men trust more than any sermon. The flight deck erupts into motion. SBD Dauntlesses rumble forward, their propellers carving vapor trails through the heavy air. Wildcats of VF-6 roar to life, lined up like silver sharks ready to leap. On the deck, signal officers wave paddles, directing the launches in the controlled chaos of war. Within minutes, the sky is a churn of steel and thunder. Japanese dive bombers descend in near-vertical attacks, sunlight flashing on their canopies as they shriek downward like falling swords. Anti-aircraft guns thunder in reply. The Enterprise gunners firing until their shoulders ache, tracers threading the air in glowing arcs. A near miss lifts the ship bodily, pitching men to the deck. The next hit is not a miss. A 500-pound bomb smashes through the flight deck near the forward elevator, detonating deep inside the ship. The deck buckles, flames leap upward, orange and oily. Below, sailors in engineering compartments are thrown off their feet, ears ringing, faces streaked with soot. Damage control crews rush in, sealing hatches, dragging fire hoses through corridors lit only by the pulsing red of emergency lamps. "Get that fire under control!" someone shouts. The response is a dozen men moving as one, hose lines spitting water into the inferno. Smoke rolls across the hangar deck like storm clouds. Men cough, blinded, feeling for the next valve or ladder by memory alone. It's chaos, but trained chaos drilled into them since Norfolk and Pearl. The Enterprise breathes, coughs, and steadies herself. She's been hit before, and every man aboard knows the rhythm of her recovery. Up above, the Japanese pilots bank away, convinced the Big E is finished. They've seen her vanish beneath clouds of smoke before. One more American carrier gone, they'll report. Enterprise destroyed, but she isn't. By nightfall, the fires are out. The forward elevator is a gaping wound, the deck twisted, but her boilers are still burning, her rudder still answering the helm. Below decks, electricians splice melted cables with steady hands. Medics tend to burns and broken bones in the sickbay, the scent of iodine mingling with diesel fumes. That evening, Spruance sends a coded message to Pearl. Enterprise still in action, damage heavy but controllable. It's brief, understated, Navy language for what the men feel is near miraculous. Days later, reporters in Tokyo broadcast a triumphant declaration. The USS Enterprise has been sunk. Japanese sailors aboard the carrier Shokaku cheer at the news. Across the ocean, the Enterprise crew listens to the same broadcast over a crackling radio. Laughter ripples through the mess hall. A machinist wipes sweat from his face and mutters, "Guess we didn't get the memo." They paint new gray patches over her scars, hammer her plates back into shape, and in a few short weeks, the sunk carrier sails again. Her decks gleam with fresh paint. Her name remains, bold white letters spelling Enterprise against the Pacific horizon. When she next appears off Guadalcanal, even the Japanese spotters can't quite believe their eyes. They whisper a name that spreads across their fleet, the Grey Ghost. The carrier that should be gone, that refuses to stay gone. Each time the enemy reports her sunk, she returns, scarred, slower perhaps, but unbroken. Her aircraft keep launching, her guns keep roaring. Sailors begin to wear her reputation like armor. The ghost can't die, they say on dark watches. Not while we're aboard her. In Tokyo, intelligence officers frown at photographs that shouldn't exist. The Enterprise escorting convoys, her aircraft striking Rabaul, her call signs still active on intercepted radio traffic. The disbelief turns to frustration, then fear. How many times can one ship cheat destruction? As 1942 turns to 1943, the Enterprise has fought in nearly every major carrier engagement in the Pacific. She's battered, patched, and proud, and her legend grows with each return from the dead. But her most dangerous test is still ahead, the night sky over Santa Cruz, where even ghosts can bleed. October 26, 1942. The dawn is a bruise-colored haze above the Santa Cruz Islands. Rain squalls whip across the decks of Task Force 16, and the USS Enterprise cuts through the storm like a wounded animal that refuses to stop moving. Her decks are slick with seawater. Her gun crews huddle under tarps, hands wrapped around mugs of coffee that taste of diesel and fear. They all know what's coming. The Japanese fleet, with carriers Shokaku, Zuikaku, and Zuiho, has been spotted moving east. The Americans are outnumbered, short on aircraft, and carrying damage from months of non-stop combat. Yet when the General Quarters alarm howls across the ship at 0612 hours, every man is already moving. Helm hard over, all engines ahead. Below deck, firemen shovel fuel oil into the roaring furnaces. The carrier shudders, accelerating to flank speed. Above, the flight deck becomes a thunderstorm of motion. Sailors haul bombs on steel trolleys, locking them beneath the wings of SBD Dauntlesses. Plane handlers signal through wind and rain. Launch the Scouts! Moments later, the first wave roars skyward, a deafening chorus of engines that vibrates through the bones. By mid-morning, lookouts spot black dots on the northern horizon. Enemy aircraft, dozens of them. Dive bombers, torpedo planes. The word spreads like lightning. Incoming! The ship goes dark, non-essential lights out. Men at their battle stations grip cold steel. Gunners strip off shirts, drenched in sweat despite the wind. The air smells of ozone and cordite. Open fire! The sky explodes. Tracers streak upwards, slicing through clouds. The Enterprise 5-inch guns hammer away, their barrels glowing red. 40mm and 20mm batteries chatter endlessly, the rhythm like a monstrous drumbeat. The sound is a physical thing, a roar that consumes all thought. Then comes the first hit. A bomb smashes into the flight deck just aft of the island. The deck heaves. Men are thrown to the planks. Shrapnel whines through the air like hornets. Another bomb tears through the forward elevator, detonating deep inside the ship. Fireballs roll through the hangar, feeding on aviation fuel. For a moment, it looks like the Enterprise might finally die. Smoke pours from the elevator shafts, fire alarms wail. Damage control parties sprint through choking corridors, hauling hoses, carrying wounded men over their shoulders. Chief Petty Officer Charles Penner leads one team into the hangar bay, where flames dance along the wreckage of a dauntless bomber. He opens the nozzle full force, white water cutting through orange fire. His boots slip on fuel-slick metal, but he doesn't stop. On the bridge, Captain Osborne B. Hardison, who had relieved Murray months earlier, watches the chaos below, his face streaked with soot. "Maintain course," he orders. "Keep her steady." But steady is a relative term. Another bomb slams into the aft starboard quarter. The carrier lurches sideways. Fragments tear into the island's structure, shredding communications cables. Radios crackle, die, then sputter back to life. Down in the engine rooms, sailors tighten valves with bloodied hands, keeping steam pressure steady even as the temperature climbs past 120 degrees. At 10:20 hours, a near miss rocks the hull so hard that the ship's forward elevator collapses completely. For several long minutes, the Enterprise drifts half-blind through smoke, her decks a maze of fire and falling debris. And still she fights back. The gunners keep firing, even through smoke so thick they can barely see. Ammunition runners dash between stations, their uniforms scorched, eyes burning from fumes. Above, Wildcats from VF-10 slash through the attacking bombers, cutting them down in savage dogfights. One Japanese Val dive bomber, already trailing fire, dives straight into the sea yards from the carrier's bow, the explosion drenching the deck in boiling spray. The attacks finally break off. The sea quiets, except for the hiss of steam and the dull crackle of fires dying out. The Enterprise lists slightly to starboard, her deck cratered, her elevators destroyed. 74 men are dead, more than 100 wounded, but she's still moving. Spruance's dispatch that afternoon is brief and clinical. Enterprise damaged, still operational. It doesn't capture the smell of burned paint, the ringing in the men's ears, or the sight of sailors collapsing beside hoses after hours of fighting fire. By nightfall, the Japanese again report victory. Another broadcast proclaiming the Enterprise sunk. Across the Pacific, Tokyo celebrates. But out at Santa Cruz, the gray ghost silhouette still glides across the dark water, her lights dim, her engines beating like a stubborn heart. She retreats to Noumea under her own power. When she enters harbor days later, the crews of other ships line their rails in silent salute. No music, no speeches, just a shared awe that this ship, this survivor, has refused to die once more. As welders and repairmen swarm over her torn decks, one signalman paints fresh white letters near the bow. The gray ghost still lives. And from that night on, even the Japanese sailors who'd claimed her death whisper her name not with anger, but with something like respect, maybe even fear. Because they know now, the Enterprise does not sink. Spring 1943, Pearl Harbor. The USS Enterprise lies docked in dry dock number 1, stripped bare like a wounded animal in surgery. Her hull is open to the sunlight. Scaffolds surround her, and hundreds of workers crawl over her like ants. Sparks from welding torches rain down in bright orange showers. The clang of hammers, the whine of drills, and the deep groan of metal reverberate across the yard. She should be finished. By all logic, by every line of Japanese dispatch, the Enterprise should be rusting on the ocean floor. But she isn't, and that's exactly what makes her terrifying to the enemy and beloved by her own. The men who survive Santa Cruz walk her decks again, touching her new armor plates like old friends. Chief Machinist's mate Ortega, who'd been pulled from a fire in the hangar deck 6 months before, runs his hand along a freshly welded seam. "Looks good," he murmurs, voice hoarse. "Feels stronger." In the distance, an admiral's car pulls up. Chester W. Nimitz himself steps out, his cap shadowing his eyes as he studies the ship. She's been hit, burned, bombed, but she won't stay down. he says to no one in particular. Then with quiet conviction, get her ready. We'll need her again soon. By November, the Enterprise is back at sea, her engines tuned, her air group reformed. VF-10, the Grim Reapers, are aboard once more, flying shiny new F-6F Hellcats. And when she departs Pearl Harbor, sailors from neighboring ships gather to watch her go. Someone shouts, "There goes the Ghost!" And the name sticks like a battle cry. The Pacific is changing. Guadalcanal has been secured. The tide of war is slowly turning. But every advance needs a spearhead, and the Enterprise becomes exactly that. April 1943, the Marshalls, then the Gilberts, then the long leap to the Marianas. Her Dauntlesses and Avengers pound Japanese bases day after day, the steady roar of engines echoing across the sea. From her decks, flight after flight lifts into the blue, striking targets that were once unthinkably far from American reach. On one such raid, Lieutenant John Crumlin leads his squadron toward Jaluit Atoll. Through his canopy, he spots the atoll's harbor. Ships at anchor, flak bursting below like black flowers. "All right, boys," he radios. "Let's give them a reminder the Ghost's still here." The Dauntlesses roll into their dives, sirens screaming, sunlight flashing on their wings. When they return, the deck crew greets them with grins. The Japanese positions are smoking ruins. Below decks, life goes on. Poker games, mail calls, the smell of fresh bread from the galley. But there's always tension under the laughter. Everyone knows the Ghost's luck can't hold forever. Every time she returns from battle, men count the holes, the missing faces, the stories that end mid-sentence. By now, the Enterprise reputation has grown beyond the Pacific. American newspapers call her the fightingest ship in the Navy. Japanese intelligence officers, embarrassed by yet another false sinking, nickname her Jigoku no Kote, the Emperor of Hell. Enemy pilots whisper about her in ready rooms from Truk to Rabaul. One aviator captured after the war recalled, "When we saw her again after Santa Cruz, we laughed first. We thought it was another ship with the same name. But then she turned into the wind and launched planes. We said, maybe this ship is a ghost." That legend becomes its own weapon. Every time American radio traffic identifies Task Force 58 Enterprise Group, Japanese morale dips a little lower. The Grey Ghost has become a psychological shadow, haunting every operation she approaches. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the Enterprise once again leads the charge. Her pilots, flying the powerful F-6F Hellcats, join what would become known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. In less than 2 days, hundreds of Japanese planes fall from the sky, many never even reaching the fleet. From the bridge, Captain Matt Gardner watches through binoculars as streaks of black smoke trail across the sky. "Looks like the Ghost still knows how to fight," he says dryly. By this point, the ship carries scars from every major battle since Pearl Harbor. Some of her original armor has been replaced 3 times. Yet she sails on, silent, relentless, her decks always ready for another dawn launch. Even as newer, larger carriers like the Essex and Bunker Hill join the fleet, sailors still glance toward the Enterprise with reverence. She's not the biggest, not the fastest, but she's the one that never dies. When 1945 dawns and the Pacific War nears its end, the Enterprise remains where she's always been, at the front. From Iwo Jima to Okinawa, she launches strike after strike. Kamikazes find her too, and one in April slams directly into her flight deck. The explosion tears through the forward section, killing 14 and wounding dozens. Once again, smoke billows high. Once again, the world writes her off. And once again, the Grey Ghost lives. Towed back to Ulithi, battered and burned, her crew refuses to abandon ship. "She's taken us through everything," says Lieutenant Hal Thompson, wiping soot from his face. "We're not leaving her now." When the fires are out, when the last wounded are carried below, a sailor quietly paints new words on the scorched island superstructure. 4 words that define the ship and every man who ever served aboard her. Enterprise still fights on. She would survive the war. She would come home battered, haunted, and unmatched, the most decorated ship in American naval history. And to those who saw her in battle, friend or foe, She would forever be remembered not as steel and rivets, but as something else entirely, a ghost that refused to die.